The icy wind clawed at Emily's face as she rushed down the dimly lit street, her thin coat barely enough to shield her from the cold. Her breath came in sharp bursts, visible in the freezing air, as she clutched the worn strap of her bag. She wasn't running from danger but from despair, a growing void of unpaid bills and empty cupboards. The sight of a frail figure huddled against a lamppost brought her steps to a halt. The man was barely a shadow against the snow-dusted sidewalk, his head bowed and hands trembling as he tried to shield himself from the relentless wind. Emily's first instinct was to keep walking. Her problems were big enough without taking on someone else's. But something about him made her stop. She glanced at the crumpled $20 bill in her pocket, the last of her money meant to stretch through the week. Her heart hammered as she wrestled with the decision. Finally, she approached him. "Hey, you okay?" she asked softly, kneeling to meet his gaze. The man looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but piercing. "Just cold. But I'll manage," he mumbled, though the quiver in his voice said otherwise. Without giving herself time to reconsider, Emily pressed the $20 into his hand. "Get something warm to eat," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. The man stared at the money, his mouth opening as if to protest, but no words came out. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. Emily nodded and walked away, her pace quickening as she fought the sting of tears. She told herself it was no big deal, just money. But deep down, she wondered if she'd made a mistake. The next morning, she woke up to the bitter chill of her tiny apartment. Wrapping herself in a blanket, Emily shuffled to the kitchen, her stomach rumbling. There wasn't much left. A stale piece of bread and a near-empty jar of peanut butter. As she debated whether to eat or save it, a knock at her door startled her. She opened it cautiously to find a plain white envelope lying on the mat. No name, no markings, just an envelope. Frowning, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a note written in elegant handwriting. "Your kindness didn't go unnoticed. Go to the Rosewood Cafe on 3rd Street today. Your life is about to change." Emily's heart raced. Was this a prank? A scam? Her thoughts immediately jumped to the old man. But how could he have orchestrated something like this? Curiosity warred with suspicion, but in the end, curiosity won. The Rosewood Cafe was a warm, inviting haven nestled on a bustling street. Emily hadn't been there in years, not since her financial troubles began. As she stepped inside, the scent of freshly baked pastries and brewed coffee enveloped her. She stood awkwardly near the counter, unsure of what to do, when the barista smiled and called her name. "Emily, this is for you." She blinked in surprise as he handed her a steaming cup of coffee and a plate with a flaky croissant. "Who?" she started, but he cut her off. "It's from a friend," he said with a knowing smile. Emily sat at a corner table, savoring the rare treat while her mind raced. Who could have done this? She was halfway through the coffee when a man approached her table. He was sharply dressed, with a confident yet kind demeanor. "Emily?" he asked, his voice warm but firm. "Yes," she replied, wary. The man pulled out a chair and sat down, folding his hands on the table. "My name's Daniel. I saw what you did last night." Her stomach tightened. "The man on the street?" He nodded. "You gave him your last $20, didn't you?" Emily's eyes narrowed. "How do you know that?" "I have my ways," Daniel said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Let's just say I make it my business to notice acts of kindness." Her suspicion deepened, but Daniel's sincerity was disarming. "Why does it matter to you?" "Because kindness like yours is rare," he said, his gaze steady. "And I believe it deserves to be rewarded." Daniel slid an envelope across the table. "Inside is an opportunity. Not a handout, but a chance to rebuild your life. Take it and you won't regret it." Emily hesitated, her fingers trembling as she opened the envelope. Inside was an offer, a job at a company Daniel owned, along with a stipend to help her get back on her feet. Her throat tightened. "Why are you doing this?" "Because someone once did the same for me," Daniel said simply. "And I've made it my mission to pay it forward." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she realized this wasn't a scam or a cruel joke. It was real. Over the following months, Emily's life transformed. The job provided stability she hadn't felt in years, and the kindness she'd shown that freezing night seemed to ripple outward. She began helping others whenever she could. A meal for a struggling neighbor, a coat for someone on the street, always remembering the power of a single, selfless act. One evening, as she walked past the spot where she'd met the old man, she paused. He was gone, but his memory remained. Emily smiled, knowing that moment had set everything in motion. Sometimes the smallest gestures have the most profound impact. And for Emily, that cold winter night marked the beginning of a brighter, warmer future. As Emily stood by the lamppost where it all began, memories of that cold night flooded back. She thought about how much her life had changed since then, how one moment of compassion had opened doors she never imagined existed. She took a deep breath, letting the chilly air fill her lungs, and whispered to herself, "I'll never forget this." Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers to rebuild. Her job with Daniel's company gave her not just a steady paycheck, but a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. She started as a junior assistant, handling small tasks and learning the ropes, but Daniel saw potential in her. "Emily," he said one day, standing at her desk, "you've got a sharp mind. I want you to lead this new project." She nearly dropped her pen. "Me? Are you sure?" "Absolutely," he said with a reassuring smile. "You've earned this." It was a challenging role, managing a team, meeting deadlines, and pitching ideas to clients. But Emily poured herself into the work, drawing strength from the belief Daniel had in her. Slowly but surely, her confidence grew. Her newfound stability allowed her to start dreaming again. She moved into a modest but cozy apartment, where she spent evenings decorating the walls with photos and paintings she'd picked up from thrift stores. It wasn't luxurious, but it was a home, a real home where she felt safe and at peace. But she never forgot the struggles she'd faced. Every time she saw someone in need, she was reminded of the old man on the corner and the $20 bill that had started it all. One evening, Emily decided to visit a local shelter. She'd been setting aside a small portion of her paycheck each month. Not much, but enough to buy some supplies: blankets, gloves, and canned food. As she handed out the items, she noticed a woman sitting in the corner, clutching a thin coat around her shoulders. The woman's hollow eyes reminded Emily of herself not so long ago. She walked over, crouched down, and offered her a blanket and a warm smile. "Thank you," the woman whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. Emily stayed for hours that night, talking to people, listening to their stories, and sharing her own. "I've been where you are," she told them. "And I know it's hard, but things can change." When she left the shelter, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. Giving back wasn't just an obligation. It was a privilege, a way to honor the kindness she'd received. Months later, Emily received an unexpected phone call from Daniel. "Emily, I need your help with something important," he said, his tone more serious than usual. "What's going on?" "There's a young man I want you to meet. His name is Liam. He's talented but going through a rough time, and I think you're the perfect person to guide him." Emily hesitated. "Me? Why me?" "Because you understand what it's like to struggle and come out stronger. Liam needs that kind of mentorship." Trusting Daniel's instincts, Emily agreed. When she met Liam, she saw a reflection of her former self, a young man weighed down by failure and doubt. Over coffee, he shared his story of lost opportunities and shattered dreams. "You're not alone," Emily told him, "and you're not defined by your mistakes. Let's figure out how to move forward." She helped Liam revamp his resume, coached him through job interviews, and introduced him to people in her network. Slowly but surely, Liam began to regain his confidence. One day, he called her with excitement bubbling in his voice. "Emily, I got the job. I can't thank you enough." Her chest swelled with pride. "You did this, Liam. I just helped you see what you were capable of." As the years passed, Emily's impact grew. She started a small nonprofit focused on helping people transition out of homelessness and into stable jobs and housing. The organization was a labor of love, and every success story reminded her of her journey. At the launch of her nonprofit's first major event, Daniel stood by her side, watching as she gave a heartfelt speech. "I want to thank everyone who believed in me," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This organization exists because someone took a chance on me when I had nothing. And now, it's my turn to pay it forward." The applause was deafening, but what meant the most to Emily was the gratitude shining in the eyes of those she'd helped. Years later, on another biting winter night, Emily found herself walking down the same street where it all began. The lamppost was still there, its light casting a warm glow on the sidewalk. She stopped for a moment, reflecting on how far she'd come. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from Liam, now a manager at a tech company, thanking her for believing in him. Emily smiled, her heart full. She had no idea where the old man she'd helped that night had gone, but she liked to believe he was safe and warm somewhere. "Thank you," she whispered into the cold night, not knowing if the words would reach him. As she walked away, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Life had given her a second chance, and she would spend every day making sure others got theirs too. The following days unfolded like a cascade of new opportunities and quiet moments of reflection. Emily found herself revisiting memories, marveling at the chain of events that had brought her here. It all started with a simple act of kindness, and now her life was rich with purpose and connections she never imagined possible. One day, while sorting through paperwork at her nonprofit's modest office, Emily's assistant, Mia, poked her head in. "There's someone here to see you," she said, a curious look on her face. "Who is it?" Emily asked, glancing at the clock. She wasn't expecting any meetings today. He didn't say, just asked if you'd spare a moment. Curiosity piqued. Emily nodded. "Send him in." A moment later, a familiar face walked through the door. It was the old man from that winter night so many years ago, though he looked healthier now, his posture more upright and his clothes clean and neatly pressed. "Hello, Emily," he said, his voice steady but warm. Her heart skipped a beat. "It's you," she whispered, standing up from her desk. He smiled. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" She hesitated, trying to find the words. "I never thought I'd see you again. Are you okay? How have you been?" The man nodded, his expression serene. "Better, thanks to you." Emily gestured for him to sit. "You have no idea how much I've thought about that night. It changed everything for me." "And for me," he replied. "That $20 didn't just buy me a meal. It reminded me that people care, even when it feels like the world has turned its back on you." Emily listened intently as the man shared his story. His name was Arthur, and he'd been living on the streets after losing his wife and his home. That night, her act of kindness had sparked something in him, a determination to find his way back. He'd sought help at a shelter the next day, where he was connected to resources that eventually turned his life around. "But what brings you here now?" Emily asked, her voice soft. "I heard about what you've been doing," Arthur said. "Your nonprofit, the people you've helped. It's incredible. I wanted to thank you in person and offer my help." "Your help?" Arthur nodded. "I know what it's like to be at rock bottom. If there's anything I can do, talk to people, share my story, lend a hand. I want to be part of this." Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. "You have no idea how much that means to me, Arthur." "Thank you." Over the following months, Arthur became a vital part of the nonprofit. His story resonated deeply with those they aimed to help, inspiring others to take the first steps toward rebuilding their lives. One day, as Emily and Arthur wrapped up a community outreach event, he turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know, it's funny how life works," he said. "What do you mean?" "If you hadn't stopped that night, we wouldn't be standing here. And who knows how many lives would still be in the dark because of it." Emily smiled, a wave of gratitude washing over her. "I guess kindness has a way of rippling out, doesn't it?" Arthur nodded. "It does. And you've created a tidal wave." Years passed, and Emily's nonprofit grew beyond her wildest dreams. What began as a small effort in her local community expanded into a network of shelters, job training programs, and affordable housing initiatives. Emily became a sought-after speaker, sharing her story at conferences and events, always emphasizing the power of small acts of kindness. But despite her growing influence, She never lost touch with the personal connections that mattered most. She continued to visit shelters, sit with those in need, and listen to their stories. One evening, after a particularly long day, Emily returned to her apartment and found a package waiting for her at the door. Inside was a beautifully crafted plaque with a simple inscription, "For the one who turned kindness into a legacy." Emily held it close, tears brimming in her eyes. She didn't know who had sent it, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. What she had started on that cold winter night had grown into something far greater than herself. As she placed the plaque on her bookshelf, she glanced out the window at the bustling city below. Somewhere out there, another act of kindness was unfolding, sparking a new journey for someone in need. And she knew, without a doubt, that the cycle would continue.
The rain poured mercilessly, turning the streets into glistening rivers under the pale glow of streetlights. Ethan Hayes sprinted down the sidewalk, his worn boots splashing through puddles. He wasn't running to escape the rain. He was running toward the chaos ahead. A car had spun out of control on the slick road, crashing violently into a tree at the edge of a ravine. The sound of crunching metal still echoed in his ears as he reached the scene. The vehicle teetered dangerously, its front wheels barely gripping the muddy edge. Inside, a woman sat frozen, her face pale and her hands clutching the steering wheel. Ethan shouted, "Hey, don't move. I'll get you out." He grabbed a tire iron from the back of the car and smashed the window. Rain mixed with gasoline as it pooled inside the car, the air thick with danger. "Take my hand," he urged, his voice cutting through the roar of the storm. The woman hesitated, tears streaming down her face, but finally she reached out. With a burst of strength, Ethan pulled her free just as the car gave way, tumbling into the ravine below. They collapsed together on the wet ground, gasping for breath. She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "You saved my life." Ethan shook his head. "I just did what anyone would have done." The woman, who later introduced herself as Lena Cross, would soon upend Ethan's life in ways he couldn't imagine. The next morning, as Ethan returned to the garage where he worked, he could barely shake the night's events. His co-workers teased him for his soaked clothes and tired eyes, but he shrugged it off. "Just another night," he muttered. Yet, as he turned to his workbench, a sleek black car pulled up outside. Lena stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement as she approached. The noise in the garage died down instantly. Her presence commanded attention. "Ethan Hayes," she said, her voice firm but warm. He wiped his hands on a rag, feeling out of place. "That's me. Something wrong with your car?" "No," she replied, holding out a business card. "But I owe you. If you ever need anything, call me." Ethan hesitated, pocketing the card as she left. He didn't think much of it. What could someone like her possibly want from someone like him? Days later, he found out. 3 days later, Ethan stood at the garage, wiping his hands after a long day of work, when a courier handed him a sleek envelope embossed with a gold emblem. He opened it to find an invitation, his name written in bold, elegant script. It was an invitation to meet Lena at her office in the heart of the city. Ethan wasn't sure what to think. This kind of thing didn't happen to people like him. He spent the rest of the day debating whether to go, but finally decided there was no harm in hearing her out. The next morning, he stood outside a towering skyscraper that gleamed in the sunlight. Dressed in his best, though still slightly scruffy, clothes, he entered the building. The lobby was intimidating, with polished marble floors and suits bustling in every direction. A receptionist guided him to the top floor, where Lena's office overlooked the sprawling city skyline. She greeted him warmly, her presence somehow both commanding and approachable. "Thank you for coming, Ethan," she said, gesturing for him to sit. He hesitated, taking in the luxurious office before settling into a chair. "Not sure why I'm here, but sure." She smiled. "I owe you a lot more than a thank you for what you did that night. But this isn't just about gratitude. I saw something in you, something rare. You didn't hesitate to risk your life for a stranger. That kind of character is invaluable, especially in a world like this." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just a mechanic, Ms. Cross." "Call me Lena," she corrected. "And you're not just anything. I want to offer you an opportunity, a job, working directly with me. I think you're capable of far more than you realize." Her words caught him off guard. "A job? Doing what exactly?" "Start as my assistant," Lena explained. "Learn the ropes, get a feel for this world. You have potential, Ethan, and I want to help you unlock it." The idea seemed absurd. Ethan had spent his life under the hoods of cars, not navigating the corporate jungle. Yet, something in her tone, earnest and confident, made him consider it. After a long pause, he nodded. "All right, I'll give it a shot." Ethan's first week at Cross Enterprises was a whirlwind. He'd traded grease-streaked overalls for stiff suits, and the transition was anything but smooth. The towering office walls seemed to mock him as he stumbled through his duties. Lena was patient, guiding him through meetings, schedules, and decisions that felt light years beyond his expertise. But not everyone welcomed him. Whispers followed him through the halls, murmurs of favoritism and doubt. "Just another charity case," one senior executive sneered as Ethan passed by. The tension boiled over during a meeting where Ethan presented a project idea. Mark Talbot, a high-ranking manager known for his sharp tongue, interrupted with a laugh. "This is amateur hour. Why are we wasting time on this?" Ethan froze, his confidence crumbling under the weight of the criticism. But as his eyes met Lena's across the table, her calm nod bolstered him. Taking a deep breath, he pushed forward, speaking with the passion and practicality he'd honed as a mechanic. When he finished, the room was silent. Then slowly, heads began to nod. Even Lena smiled, her pride evident. For the first time, Ethan felt like he belonged, not because of where he came from, but because of what he brought to the table. As weeks turned into months, Ethan adapted. His ideas saved the company money, and even his harshest critics couldn't deny his growing value. Lena remained his steadfast mentor, their bond deepening with late-night brainstorming sessions and candid conversations. Yet, success brought complications. Rumors swirled about their relationship, whispers that Lena's support went beyond professional. Ethan tried to ignore the gossip, but it gnawed at him. He didn't want his achievements overshadowed by baseless assumptions. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he found himself alone with Lena in her office. "Why are you doing this for me?" he asked, his voice low. She looked at him, her gaze steady. "Because you deserve it. And because you remind me of what integrity looks like, something this world desperately needs." Her words reassured him, but the challenges were far from over. The day everything nearly unraveled started like any other. Ethan arrived to find the office buzzing with tension. Fake documents had surfaced, implicating him in financial misconduct. An anonymous tip had triggered an investigation, and the accusations hit him like a gut punch. In a sterile conference room, he faced a panel of stern executives. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Hayes," one of them said gravely. Ethan's voice trembled. "I didn't do this. I swear." Lena stepped in, her tone firm. "I trust Ethan completely. We'll get to the bottom of this." True to her word, she and her assistant worked tirelessly. Within days, the trail led back to Mark Talbot, whose bitterness had driven him to sabotage Ethan. The truth came to light, clearing Ethan's name, but the ordeal left scars. "I can't keep fighting these battles," Ethan admitted to Lena afterward. "You don't have to prove anything to them," she said gently. "Just to yourself." Her words stayed with him. Ethan's journey wasn't just about success. It was about resilience, integrity, and finding his place in a world that seemed out of reach. And as he stood in Lena's office one evening, looking out over the city, he realized something. The man who had pulled her from the wreckage that stormy night was still in him. But now, he was stronger, more determined, and ready for whatever came next. Ethan's transformation was undeniable. The once timid mechanic who walked into Cross Enterprises now stood with confidence, shoulders back, eyes steady. He had proven himself time and again, silencing doubters with results that spoke louder than words. But success, as he had learned, was a double-edged sword. Though Mark Talbot had been dealt with, the corporate world was a constant battlefield, and Ethan still faced resistance from those who saw him as an outsider. Each challenge only fueled his determination, but it also weighed on him. His nights grew longer, and the demands of his new life left little time for anything else. One evening, Lena invited him to a charity gala hosted by Cross Enterprises. It was a dazzling event with crystal chandeliers, flowing gowns, and tuxedos as far as the eye could see. Ethan, dressed in a tailored suit Lena had insisted he wear, felt out of place among the city's elite. He wasn't here to fit in, though. He was here to represent the company. As the night wore on, Ethan noticed Lena moving through the crowd with her usual grace, effortlessly commanding attention. She made her way to him, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Enjoying yourself?" she asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. "I feel like a fish out of water," he admitted, taking the glass. "But I'm surviving." Lena chuckled. "You're doing more than surviving, Ethan. Look around. People are starting to notice you, not just as my assistant, but as someone who belongs." Her words were encouraging, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that not everyone was on his side. As he scanned the room, he caught sight of a group of executives huddled together, their glances toward him anything but subtle. Among them was a man he didn't recognize, tall, with sharp features and an air of authority. "Who's that?" Ethan asked, nodding toward the man. Lena followed his gaze, her expression tightening. "That's Victor Crane. He's been eyeing a merger with Cross Enterprises for years. He's powerful, ruthless, and not someone to be underestimated." Ethan sensed there was more to the story, but before he could press further, Victor approached. "Lena," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "Always a pleasure." "Victor," Lena replied, her tone polite but cool. Victor's eyes shifted to Ethan. "And you must be the famous Ethan Hayes. I've heard quite a bit about you." Ethan extended a hand, meeting Victor's grip firmly. "Good things, I hope?" Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say intriguing things." With that, he excused himself, leaving Ethan with a lingering sense of unease. The encounter with Victor marked the beginning of a new chapter in Ethan's journey. Weeks later, whispers of an impending hostile takeover filled the office. Victor Crane was making moves, and Lena was in his crosshairs. Cross Enterprises had weathered storms before, but this was different. Victor's influence was vast, and his tactics were underhanded. Ethan found himself pulled deeper into the fray. Lena trusted him with critical tasks, from gathering data to attending high-stakes meetings. Each day was a test of his resolve, his ability to navigate a world where alliances shifted like sand. But it wasn't just the corporate chess game that weighed on him. It was the toll it was taking on Lena. One late night, as they worked in her office, Ethan noticed the exhaustion etched into her face. "You've been carrying this company on your shoulders for too long," he said. Lena sighed, leaning back in her chair. "It's my responsibility. My family built this from the ground up." "You don't have to do it alone," Ethan said. "You've got people who believe in you." She gave him a small smile. "Including you?" "Especially me," he replied without hesitation. Their conversation was interrupted by Lena's assistant, who rushed in with urgent news. "Victor Crane just leaked confidential information about our upcoming project. It's all over the news." Lena's expression darkened. "That's a direct attack." Ethan clenched his fists. "How do we fight back?" "We outsmart him," Lena said, determination replacing her fatigue. "And we make sure he knows we're not going down without a fight." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of strategy and counter-strategy. Ethan found himself stepping into roles he never imagined, negotiating with stakeholders, analyzing data, and even leading a team to secure key partnerships. Lena's mentorship was invaluable, but she also gave him room to prove himself. The turning point came during a crucial board meeting. Victor Crane had managed to sway several members to his side, and the atmosphere was tense. Ethan sat beside Lena, his heart pounding as the debate grew heated. When it was his turn to speak, Ethan stood, drawing on every ounce of courage he had. "I know I'm not what you'd expect in this room," he began. "I didn't come from money or power, and I don't have years of corporate experience. But what I do have is a perspective you can't buy, a perspective grounded in hard work and problem solving." He outlined a plan, using insights from his time as a mechanic to propose innovative solutions that would not only save the company money, but also position it for long-term success. By the time he finished, The room was silent. One by one, the board members nodded their agreement. Even Victor couldn't hide his frustration as he realized the tide had turned. Lena smiled proudly. "Well said, Ethan." With the takeover thwarted and Cross Enterprises stronger than ever, Ethan found himself at a crossroads. Lena offered him a permanent leadership position, a chance to continue climbing the corporate ladder. But as he stood in her office, looking out at the city, he felt a tug towards something else. "I've learned so much here," he told Lena, "but I think it's time I take what I've gained and build something of my own." Lena nodded, her respect evident. "Whatever you do, Ethan, I know you'll succeed." Ethan left Cross Enterprises with a sense of purpose, ready to forge his own path. His journey had been anything but easy, but it had shaped him into someone capable of facing whatever came next.
The moment the bullet cracked the windshield of Victor's sleek black car, he slammed the brakes, swerving sharply. His heart thundered in his chest as the vehicle spun to a halt in the middle of the deserted bridge. Headlights illuminated a man standing just a few yards ahead, his face obscured by shadows, a smoking pistol in his hand. "Get out now," the stranger barked, his voice cold and commanding. Victor glanced at the glove compartment, where his own firearm lay hidden. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple as he calculated his odds. This wasn't random. Someone wanted him cornered. Instead of complying, Victor kicked the door open, stepping out with an icy glare. "You've got guts showing up like this. Who sent you?" The man chuckled darkly, stepping closer. "You're out of your league, Victor. This isn't about you anymore. It's about the empire your family built. You're just collateral." Victor's jaw tightened. "If you think I'll let you take it, you're more delusional than I thought." Before the man could reply, a flash of headlights blazed from behind, and tires screeched as a second car sped toward them. Victor instinctively dove to the ground as gunfire erupted, shattering the tense silence of the night. From the chaos, a woman's voice shouted, "Victor, get in." It was Mira, her unmistakable fiery tone cutting through the noise. Victor didn't think twice. Scrambling to his feet, he bolted toward the car as bullets whizzed past. Mira threw the car into reverse the moment he slammed the door shut. "What the hell are you doing here?" Victor growled, clutching his chest as Mira gunned the engine. "Saving your ungrateful life," she snapped, veering sharply to avoid another round of gunfire. "Do you want to argue, or should we focus on surviving the night?" Victor sank back into the seat, his adrenaline spiking as the pursuing car closed in. Tires screeched, and the unmistakable roar of engines filled the air as Mira took a sharp turn down an alleyway. Her movements were deliberate, precise, as though she'd navigated these streets under pressure before. "This isn't a random attack," Victor muttered, his mind racing to connect the dots. "They knew where I'd be." "No kidding," Mira shot back, throwing the car into another sharp turn. "Care to explain why you're suddenly on every hitman's radar?" Victor clenched his fists. The answer was obvious, but admitting it aloud was another matter. His father's empire, an intricate web of powerful allies, dangerous enemies, and dark secrets, was finally starting to collapse. And now, someone was using him as a pawn to bring it all crashing down. Myra's gaze flicked to him for a split second. "Who betrayed you?" Victor's silence was damning. "You don't know, do you?" Mira pressed. "You're in deeper than I thought. Just drive," Victor growled. But deep down, he knew she was right. Trust was a currency he'd spent recklessly, and now he was paying the price. As they sped out of the city, the oppressive weight of their situation settled over them. The night was far from over, and the fight for survival had only just begun. The car roared down the desolate highway, the city lights shrinking into the distance behind them. Myra's knuckles were white as she gripped the wheel, her sharp eyes scanning the road for any signs of pursuit. Victor sat rigid beside her, his mind churning as he tried to piece together who could have orchestrated such a brazen ambush. "You know this won't stop, right?" Mira broke the silence, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "If they've gone this far, they're not backing off until you're in the ground, or worse." Victor leaned his head back against the seat, letting out a slow, frustrated breath. "You think I don't know that? This is bigger than me now. They're after everything my father built. And tearing you apart is just their first step, Mira snapped. You're walking around like some untouchable prince. And now it's finally catching up to you. Victor's head turned sharply, his dark eyes narrowing. I didn't ask for your lecture. You weren't supposed to be involved in this. Mira gave a bitter laugh, her foot pressing harder on the gas. Too late for that now. You think I came to your rescue for fun? I know exactly what you're up against. And if I hadn't shown up when I did, you'd already be dead. Victor clenched his jaw, his anger simmering. Mira had a point, but he couldn't admit it, not here, not now. What do you know? He asked finally, his voice low. Enough, Mira said grimly, keeping her eyes on the road. Your father's enemies are more than just corporate sharks. They're ruthless. If they're coming after you, they've got resources, connections, and a motive. Whoever planned this is playing the long game, and you're just the opening move. Victor let her words sink in, his mind racing back to recent events. The deals he'd overseen, the people he'd crossed, the secrets he'd uncovered. It was all connected. But the question was, who had the power to set all of this in motion? Pull over, Victor said suddenly, his tone decisive. Mira shot him a look. What? Pull over, he repeated, more urgently this time. Mira frowned but complied, veering the car off the highway and into a secluded clearing. The engine hummed as she killed the lights, plunging them into darkness. Victor stepped out, the cool night air hitting him like a slap. He paced in front of the car, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Mira leaned against the driver's door, her arms crossed, watching him with a mix of curiosity and irritation. What's your plan, genius? She asked dryly. Or are we just waiting for them to find us? Victor stopped pacing and turned to face her, his expression resolute. We can't keep running. If we don't figure out who's behind this and why, they'll hunt me down no matter where I go. Mira tilted her head. And how exactly do you plan to do that? March up to your enemies and ask them to confess. Victor smirked, though there was no humor in it. Not exactly. I know someone who can help. Mira arched a brow. And this someone, can they be trusted? She doesn't trust anyone, Victor said, his voice softening slightly. Which is why I know she's good at what she does. Mira's expression turned skeptical. You're talking about Isabella, aren't you? Victor didn't answer immediately, but his silence was enough. Mira let out a low whistle. You're really desperate if you're going to her. You know she's got a reputation for selling secrets to the highest bidder, right? She owes me, Victor said firmly, though there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Mira shook her head, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. Fine, let's go meet your dangerous little contact. But if this backfires, I'm not sticking around to clean up the mess. Victor climbed back into the car, determination etched across his face. It won't backfire. She'll help us. She has to. As Mira started the engine, her gaze lingered on Victor for a moment longer. You'd better hope you're right, she murmured. Hours later, they pulled up to a remote industrial district on the outskirts of the city. The warehouse stood like a shadowy sentinel, its cracked windows and rusted metal exterior hiding whatever secrets lay within. This is her place? Mira asked, cutting the engine. Not exactly subtle. She's not one for appearances, Victor replied, stepping out of the car. As they approached the heavy steel door, Victor hesitated before knocking 3 times in a distinct rhythm. A long pause followed, and Mira shifted uncomfortably. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a woman with sharp features and piercing gray eyes. She wore a sleek black jacket, her stance relaxed but alert. Victor, Isabella said coolly, her gaze flicking to Mira. And a friend. How charming. Can we talk? Victor asked, his tone brisk. Isabella smirked. You're always straight to the point. Come in. The inside of the warehouse was a labyrinth of monitors, papers, and equipment. Mira glanced around, her unease growing with each passing second. So, Isabella began, perching on the edge of a cluttered desk. What brings you here? Business? Or has your perfect little world finally started crumbling? Victor's eyes darkened. I need information. Someone's targeting me. They set up an ambush tonight. Isabella raised an eyebrow, her interest piqued. And you think I can tell you who? I know you can, Victor said, his voice steady. Isabella leaned back, crossing her arms. This'll cost you. Victor's lips pressed into a thin line. I'm not here to bargain. You owe me. For a moment, Isabella said nothing, her calculating gaze locking on Victor. Finally, she sighed. Fine, I'll look into it. But if I find something big, you're going to owe me more than you're comfortable with. Victor didn't flinch. Just tell me who's behind this. Isabella smirked, her fingers flying across a nearby keyboard as she pulled up a series of encrypted files. Let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. The screen illuminated a name that made Victor's blood run cold. Victor's chest tightened as he stared at the name flashing across the screen. Darius Langford. The air in the warehouse grew heavier. Mira leaned forward, her brows knitting together. Darius Langford? As in your father's right-hand man? Victor nodded slowly, his fists clenching at his sides. He was more than that. He was practically family. My father trusted him with everything. Isabella snorted, swiveling in her chair. Well, looks like he didn't return the favor. Darius has been busy. His name's been tied to at least 3 hostile takeovers in the last 6 months. And I'm betting your empire is next. Victor's jaw tightened. The betrayal stung deeper than any bullet ever could. Do you have proof he's behind the ambush? Isabella leaned back, smirking. Not yet, but I've got a lead. Turns out, your old buddy Darius has been working with some interesting characters lately. Mercenaries, hackers, you name it. He's building an army, Victor. And he's targeting you for a reason. Victor's voice was ice cold. What reason? Isabella shrugged. That's for you to figure out. All I know is he's putting a lot of money and effort into this. My guess? It's personal. Mira crossed her arms, her voice laced with skepticism. And you're just giving us this information out of the kindness of your heart? Isabella smirked. Let's just say, if Darius takes Victor down, the ripple effects could hurt some of my other clients. I'm invested in keeping him alive. For now, Victor stepped forward, his tone sharp. Where can I find him? That's where it gets tricky, Isabella replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard again. Darius has gone underground. No official addresses, no known properties under his name. But, she paused, a flicker of intrigue crossing her face. He's hosting a private event tomorrow night. Big names, high stakes. If he's making a move, it'll start there. Victor's eyes narrowed. Where? Isabella's grin turned sly. The Altara Club. High-end. Members only. You're not getting in without an invitation. Or a very good disguise. Mira scoffed. Great. So we're crashing a party hosted by the guy trying to kill you. What could possibly go wrong? Victor ignored her sarcasm, his mind already working through the plan. I'll need access to the guest list, a layout of the club, and a way to get in unnoticed. Isabella laughed, shaking her head. You don't ask for much, do you? Fine. I'll get you what you need. But remember, you owe me for this. Victor's gaze hardened. If I make it out alive, you'll get your payment. By the time they left the warehouse, the night had deepened into an eerie stillness. Mira lit a cigarette as they walked back to the car, the orange glow briefly illuminating her face. You're really going through with this, aren't you? She asked, exhaling a plume of smoke. Victor opened the car door but paused, his expression unreadable. I don't have a choice. If Darius is behind this, he's not stopping until I'm out of the way. For good. Mira leaned against the car, studying him carefully. You know he's not just going after you. If you push him, he'll target everyone close to you. Victor's eyes flicked to hers, dark and unyielding. That's why I'm going to end this before he gets the chance. Mira shook her head, a bitter smile playing on her lips. You always did have a hero complex. Victor didn't respond. Instead, he climbed into the car, his mind already on what lay ahead. The Altara Club was a fortress disguised as a luxury venue. Its sleek, modern exterior was all glass and chrome, glowing softly under the city lights. Security was tight, with guards stationed at every entrance and surveillance cameras covering every angle. Victor adjusted the cufflinks on his tailored suit, the borrowed outfit fitting him like a second skin. Mira, dressed in a slinky black gown, adjusted the strap of her concealed holster. "You sure this is going to work?" she asked, her voice low as they approached the entrance. Victor gave a curt nod. "It has to." The plan was simple in theory. Blend in, gather intel, and confront Darius without tipping off his security. In practice, it was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. They flashed their forged invitations to the bouncer, who barely glanced at them before ushering them inside. The interior was even more opulent than Victor had imagined. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and walls lined with priceless art. The air buzzed with the low hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. Victor scanned the room, his eyes landing on the man at the center of it all. Darius Langford. He hadn't changed much. His graying hair was slicked back, his tailored suit radiating power and control. He was laughing with a group of men, each one more dangerous looking than the last. Victor's blood boiled, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to blow their cover, not yet. Mira leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "There he is. What's the play?" Victor's jaw tightened. "We wait for an opening. He's bound to slip up." Mira raised an eyebrow. "And if he doesn't? Then we make one," Victor said, his tone leaving no room for argument. But as they moved through the crowd, mingling and keeping a low profile, Victor couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. From the shadows, a pair of cold, calculating eyes followed their every move. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Victor's pulse quickened as he and Mira wove through the opulent crowd, the hum of laughter and clinking glasses masking the tension simmering just beneath the surface. The chandelier above bathed the room in golden light, but Victor couldn't shake the chill running down his spine. He wasn't just here to play defense. This was his chance to take control of the game, but one wrong move and everything could spiral into chaos. "Eyes up," Mira murmured under her breath, her lips barely moving as she leaned against the bar. Darius just made a move toward the back room. "Private." Victor nodded slightly, grabbing a glass of champagne from a passing server to maintain appearances. "Stay close, but don't follow too soon," he whispered, his tone calm despite the storm brewing inside him. Mira smirked, her crimson lips curling into a faint grin. "Subtlety isn't your strong suit, is it?" Victor ignored her and began making his way toward the velvet-curtained doorway at the far end of the hall. A guard stood posted, his expression stoic, but Victor's confidence never wavered. He handed off his glass to another server and strode toward the man like he belonged there. "Private area," the guard said gruffly, his hand raising to block Victor's path. Victor tilted his head, his voice low and firm. "I'm here to speak with Mr. Langford. He'll want to hear what I have to say." The guard's eyes narrowed, but before he could protest, the curtain was pulled back, revealing Darius himself. "Let him through," Darius said smoothly, his gravelly voice carrying an air of authority. He stepped aside, his sharp gaze locking onto Victor. The room beyond was dimly lit, the walls lined with dark wood and heavy drapes that muffled the sounds of the party outside. A long table dominated the space, scattered with papers, cigars, and a half-empty bottle of whiskey. "Victor," Darius greeted, gesturing to an empty chair. "I'll admit, I didn't expect to see you tonight, though I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. You've always been bold." Victor didn't sit. Instead, he remained standing, his hands in his pockets, his stance casual but deliberate. "Boldness runs in the family, doesn't it?" he replied, his tone cold. Darius chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Still sharp-tongued, I see. But tell me, what brings you here? Surely you didn't come to reminisce?" Victor stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I know what you've been doing. The ambush, the deals, the sabotage. You've been dismantling my family's empire piece by piece. And now you're coming after me." Darius's smile faded, his expression hardening. "You give me too much credit, Victor. If your father's empire is crumbling, it's because of the cracks he built into it, not me." "Don't lie to me," Victor snapped, his calm facade breaking for a moment. I trusted you. My father trusted you. And you stabbed us in the back. Darius rose from his chair, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the room. Your father trusted the wrong people, he said, his voice low and menacing. And now you're making the same mistake. Before Victor could respond, the sound of a scuffle outside the door drew both their attention. A muffled grunt was followed by the unmistakable crack of bone, and the door burst open. Mira stepped in, her dress slightly torn and her breathing heavy. Behind her, the guard lay unconscious on the floor. Sorry to interrupt, she said, brushing her hair back and giving Victor a pointed look. Things were getting a little too quiet out here. Darius's eyes narrowed as he took in Myra's disheveled state. You brought backup, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Victor smirked, his confidence returning. What can I say? I like to keep things interesting. Darius's expression darkened, and for a moment, the room was deathly silent. Then, with a sharp motion, he reached into his jacket. But Mira was faster. Her hand shot out, drawing her concealed weapon and leveling it at Darius before he could act. Not tonight, old man, she said, her voice steady. Darius raised his hands slightly, a slow smile spreading across his face. Impressive. You've chosen your allies well, Victor. But this changes nothing. Victor stepped forward, his tone icy. Oh, it changes everything. I'm not here to plead or negotiate, Darius. I'm here to end this. Darius's smile turned into a sneer. You don't have the stomach for what it'll take to win this game, Victor. You never did. Victor's eyes burned with fury, but he forced himself to stay calm. We'll see about that. The tension in the room was razor sharp, and it was clear that this confrontation was only the beginning. The war between Victor and Darius had just escalated, and there would be no turning back. Victor didn't waver, his glare fixed on Darius as the tension in the room thickened. Myra's steady aim didn't falter, her gun trained on the man who had once been like family to Victor. You've played this game for a long time, Victor said coldly, stepping closer. You've manipulated, betrayed, and dismantled everything my family built. But tonight, the rules change. Darius chuckled, his hands still raised. You think this ends here? You think pointing a gun at me puts you in control? His eyes flicked to Mira. Your little stunt doesn't scare me, sweetheart. Good, Mira replied dryly. I wasn't going for scared. I was going for shut up. Victor's lips twitched into a smirk, but his tone remained icy. You're done, Darius. Whatever you've been planning, it's over. Darius lowered his hands slowly, his gaze sharp and calculating. You've got guts, Victor, I'll give you that. But you don't understand the bigger picture. I'm not just coming for you. I'm coming for everything your family ever stood for. Your empire, your name, your legacy. All of it. Victor clenched his fists. Why? Why betray us? You were my father's most trusted ally. Darius leaned against the table, his grin turning vicious. Trusted? That's where your father went wrong. Trust is a weakness. Your family built an empire on lies and exploitation, and I was nothing more than a tool to keep it running. But I'm not a tool anymore. Victor stepped forward, his voice rising. So, this is about revenge? Destroying everything because you felt slighted? Darius's smirk deepened. It's not revenge. It's justice. And you, Victor, are just collateral damage. Before Victor could respond, Mira cut in. We're wasting time. Either we get what we came for, or we walk out and leave him for the authorities. Darius barked a laugh. Authorities? You think they scare me? I've got half the city in my pocket. And as for you two, he straightened, his expression turning deadly. You won't make it out of here alive. The words had barely left his mouth when the door to the private room burst open, and two armed men stormed in. Mira spun instinctively, firing a shot that struck one man in the shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. The second lunged at Victor, tackling him to the floor. The two grappled as Mira ducked behind the table, using it as cover while exchanging gunfire with more guards who flooded the room. Victor twisted beneath his attacker, landing a hard elbow to the man's jaw before rolling free. He grabbed a heavy crystal ashtray from the table and swung it with all his strength, knocking the man unconscious. "Mira!" Victor shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm a little busy here," she called back, firing another shot that narrowly missed Darius, who was retreating toward a hidden door at the back of the room. Victor's heart pounded as he scrambled to his feet. "He's getting away." "Then go," Mira yelled, reloading her weapon without missing a beat. Victor didn't hesitate. He bolted toward the hidden door, kicking it open with a force that echoed down the dimly lit corridor beyond. Darius was already halfway down the hall, his steps hurried but steady. "Darius!" Victor's voice boomed, his footsteps echoing as he sprinted after him. Darius glanced back, his expression a mix of anger and amusement. "Still chasing shadows, Victor. You'll never catch me." Victor's blood boiled as he pushed himself harder, closing the distance between them. His muscles burned, but he couldn't let Darius slip away. Not now. At the end of the corridor, Darius darted into a stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time. Victor followed, his breath ragged but his determination unwavering. When he burst onto the rooftop, the cold night air hit him like a wall. Darius stood near the edge, his silhouette framed by the city skyline. "You really don't know when to quit," Darius said, his voice carrying over the wind. Victor stepped closer, his chest heaving. "This ends now." Darius laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. "You still don't get it, do you? Even if you stop me, the damage is already done. Your family's empire is crumbling, and there's nothing you can do to save it." Victor shook his head, his eyes blazing. "You think I care about the empire? This isn't about money or power. It's about justice. For my father. For everyone you've betrayed." Darius's expression hardened, his hand reaching into his jacket. But Victor was faster. In a blur of motion, Victor lunged forward, grabbing Darius's wrist and twisting it. A gun clattered to the rooftop as the two men grappled, their struggle a brutal clash of strength and desperation. Darius threw a punch, but Victor ducked, driving his shoulder into Darius's chest and slamming him against the rooftop's edge. "You've lost," Victor growled, his voice low and dangerous. Darius sneered, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. "Maybe. But if I'm going down, I'm taking you with me." With a sudden burst of strength, Darius shoved Victor back, sending him stumbling. But Victor recovered quickly, his resolve unshaken. "Not tonight," Victor said coldly, delivering a sharp blow to Darius's gut. The older man crumpled, gasping for air. Before Victor could press further, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Blue and red lights illuminated the rooftop as police vehicles surrounded the building below. Mira appeared at the rooftop door, her dress torn and her hair wild but her expression victorious. "Guess who called in backup?" she said, smirking. Victor stepped back, his chest rising and falling as he stared down at Darius. "It's over." Darius glared up at him, his voice a venomous hiss. "This isn't over, Victor." "Not by a long shot." Victor didn't reply. He turned and walked away as the police stormed the rooftop, their shouts filling the air. Mira joined him, her smirk softening into a satisfied smile. "You did it." Victor shook his head, his expression grim. "Not yet. This was just the beginning." As they descended the stairs, leaving the chaos behind, Victor couldn't shake the feeling that Darius's words held a grain of truth. The war wasn't over, it was just getting started. Victor stood in the shadowy stairwell, his breath steady but his mind racing. Mira trailed behind him, her footsteps light but deliberate. The adrenaline from the rooftop confrontation still coursed through his veins, but he knew this wasn't the end. It was just one battle in a much larger war. As they reached the ground floor, the scene outside was chaos. Police officers swarmed the building, some carting off Darius's men in handcuffs while others barked orders into their radios. Darius himself was being escorted into the back of a police vehicle, his face a mask of defiance. Mira nudged Victor with her elbow. "You think he's going to talk?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Not willingly. But it doesn't matter. He's not the only one pulling strings." Mira arched a brow. "You think there's someone bigger behind this?" Victor nodded, his gaze fixed on the flashing lights of the police cars. Darius was smart, but he's not the mastermind. Someone else is driving this. And they won't stop just because he's in custody. Mira sighed, running a hand through her hair. Great. So what now? We keep playing cat and mouse until you're either dead or broke. Victor smirked faintly, though there was no humor in it. Not this time. It's time to go on the offensive. The days that followed were a whirlwind of strategy and execution. Victor worked tirelessly, poring over every scrap of information Isabella had dug up, while Mira handled security and logistics. Their operation wasn't just about defense anymore. It was about dismantling the web of corruption and betrayal that had nearly destroyed him. Through sleepless nights and tense discussions, they uncovered a deeper conspiracy. Darius had been working under the direction of a shadowy figure known only as the Broker, a faceless entity with ties to black market dealings, corporate espionage, and political influence. Isabella confirmed the lead with a sardonic grin. You're stepping into some seriously dangerous territory. The Broker isn't just a player. They're the whole game. Victor's eyes darkened. Then we take the game away from them. Their search for the Broker led them to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. The location was nothing special on the surface, but Isabella's intel revealed it to be a hub for illegal dealings, serving as a meeting point for the Broker's associates. Victor, Mira, and a small team of loyal allies stormed the factory under the cover of night. The air was thick with tension as they moved through the labyrinth of rusted machinery and dimly lit corridors. Keep your eyes open, Mira whispered, her weapon drawn. If this place is as important as Isabella says, they won't leave it unguarded. She was right. They encountered resistance, armed guards patrolling the perimeter, their movements precise and disciplined. But Victor's team was prepared. The clashes were brief but brutal, and soon, they reached the heart of the facility. Inside, they found a room lined with monitors, each screen displaying a different piece of the puzzle. Financial transactions, encrypted messages, surveillance footage. And at the center of it all was a sleek desk, its surface immaculate except for a single laptop. Victor approached cautiously, his pulse pounding. He opened the laptop, his fingers flying over the keys as he navigated the encrypted files. What are you looking for? Mira asked, standing guard by the door. A name, a face, something to expose the Broker, Victor replied, his voice tense. After what felt like an eternity, he found it. A file buried deep in the system, labeled simply Identity. Victor opened it, his breath hitching as the image loaded. The face that appeared on the screen was one he recognized immediately. Margot, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Mira frowned, stepping closer. Who's Margot? Victor's hands tightened into fists. She's my father's sister, my aunt. She's the last person I ever expected to see behind this. Myra's eyes widened. Your own family? Victor nodded, his mind racing. She was always ambitious, but this, she's been orchestrating everything. The sabotage, the betrayals. It was all her. Mira let out a low whistle. Well, that's a twist. Confronting Margot wasn't easy. She was as cunning as she was ruthless, and she didn't go down without a fight. But Victor had learned from his past mistakes. This time, he was 2 steps ahead. With the evidence he'd uncovered, he exposed her network to the authorities, dismantling her operations piece by piece. Margot's fall was swift and decisive, her allies abandoning her as the weight of her crimes came crashing down. But even as she was led away in handcuffs, her parting words lingered in Victor's mind. You think this is over? She hissed, her eyes burning with defiance. This empire you're trying to rebuild, it'll never stand. You're just like your father, and you'll fail just like he did. Victor watched her go, her words a distant echo as the chaos settled around him. Weeks later, Victor stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the city sprawling out before him. The battle had been won, but the scars it left behind were deep. Mira joined him, a glass of whiskey in hand. So what now? You've taken down the bad guys, reclaimed your name. Is this where you ride off into the sunset? Victor chuckled softly, though his expression was pensive. Not quite. There's still work to do. My father's legacy, it's not just about power or money. It's about rebuilding something stronger, something better. Mira raised her glass. Here's to doing things the hard way. Victor clinked his glass against hers, a small smile tugging at his lips. Here's to doing things the right way. As the city lights glittered around them, Victor knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Because this time,